I'm at the Orbeljani Palace, the official residence of the President of Georgia, and it is my great honor to be now joined for an exclusive interview by President Salome Zourabichvili. Good evening, thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
And thank you for the invitation here. Yesterday you delivered a powerful address in which you rejected the results of Saturday's parliamentary elections. I think the question that many people asked back then was, what happens next? In other words, what's your plan, Madam President?
I don't have a plan as such. My only plan is that one cannot accept, I cannot accept, and I'm sure that the Georgian people cannot accept that they see stolen not only the votes for one party or another party by one party or by another, what they see stolen is their European future, because really that is what was at stake, and we all know in our heart, in our everyday life, that a very large majority of the Georgian people want the European future, and that there is not even a small minority that would want something with Russia. What some people might want is to keep their privileges, but that's something different. So the result of the elections was completely incredible, not credible, and was a shock to the whole of the population. A shock because that doesn't correspond to what we know is the state of mind of the population, and a shock because nobody was expecting this dimension of a fraud. We all knew that there would be some frauds, that the ruling party would not accept that easily the results, so they would try to keep more. They knew their own ratings much before the others. What nobody was foreseeing was this sophistication, this massive, planned and very well planned in advance falsification, manipulation of the elections. Intimidation, we know it happens. It's especially used against the civil servants, who are many in this country, and those people that are employed are always fearing for their jobs, and that's understandable. But there was money paid directly at the precincts, outside of the precincts, and more unusual and unpredictable was the use of the electronic vote and the new electronic equipment that really nobody had experienced before to manipulate the elections by using ID cards from different people that were taken out before the elections, and nobody understood why they were doing that, and used in a carousel manner. If you know what it is, it's when one person votes 10 times, 20 times with one same identity card. So all of that was very well planned between the rural areas where the electronic equipment was not present, where they stuffed the ballots, and there are videos of that. Other ways were used in the ethnic minorities, villages and small towns, where we see results like 97%, which happened a long time ago in a different socialist state. So all of that is really what shocked everyone. And there is a very deep frustration. So we have to get out of that. We have to see, and there are calls for eventually an international investigation. I know the NGOs are talking about that, and also political parties are working to make clearer the whole image. It's one thing to talk about irregularities and some frauds, as did some of the observation missions. It's another thing to show the extent of the manipulation, and that's what they are in the process of doing, and maybe would call for an international investigation. I don't know where they are in their reflections on that.
So do you anticipate maybe a revolution or a repeat of the election?
When is it that you anticipate a revolution? I am the last independent institution in this country, and more than anything, I think the stability of this country is essential for its path towards Europe. So no, I don't anticipate a revolution. I anticipate what we're seeing now is that very clear working of the parties and the NGOs to try to provide more evidence to testify for the fact that this was a massive manipulation, and then pressure from outside and from inside, and the people are going to be on the street, but very peacefully, but pressure from the outside so that the electoral results are either rectified on what evidence can be brought, or then new elections. I don't know. That is decisions that have to be taken by the political parties and their strategies. Mm-hmm. It's not a decision to be taken by the president. I am behind my people. I am behind what I think is the truth. And I'm most of all behind Georgia's European path, which has to be saved.
So what do you expect, for example, the United Nations, European Union, NATO, countries around the globe to do in this situation?
Not around the globe. I think that Georgia has been supported very clearly, and I talked to President Duda today and by its European friends and partners, and that's what we expect. There was a very clear decision of the European Council just a few weeks ago. That has to be upheld because the ruling party has not delivered on any of the points that were at stake, and not even on the last one, which was democratic, transparent, fair elections. So all these pressures and this policy has to be upheld very clearly, and if at one point we ask for support for new elections, then we will have to get this support, including in terms of real assistance. Because if we have new elections, I don't know whether that's where the political parties will go, but if that is where we go, we cannot have the same elections in the same environment. It will have to be protected in some ways to be a more reliable environment. But we are not there. It's a process, and I think that it has to be a very stable, clear process in which our European and American partners have, first of all, to support the European population, the pro-European parties, and put pressure on the government that has clearly shown more and more that it's going in the direction of Russia. Russia has been the one country whose different leaders are coming out the most clearly in favor of these elections, which is quite interesting.
Mm-hmm. And yesterday, in your address, you blamed the whole thing on Russia, saying that it was a Russian special operation that Georgian people felt.
They are the only ones that can plan with such a degree of detail and such sophistication and adequation between the different places and the instruments of fraud used, which can plan and help plan that. That's typically a FSB signature. Now, whether they did it directly, the ruling party inspired itself with some of the methods and methodology. That is something that we will never be able to prove. But the nature itself of the hybrid war and hybrid attacks is that it can never be completely proven. It's much more subtle than that. But the characteristics of what we have seen are of that type, and that is to be said because tomorrow or day after tomorrow there are elections, second round in Moldova. What can be done against Georgia, which is a country that was 90% in favor of European integration for 3 decades, and is a bigger country and has a long history of pro-European. What can they do with Moldova? So we have to be very well aware of this capacity, whether it's through the national governments or through different means or directly by propaganda or with money, like in the case of Moldova. I think that European countries have to be very well aware and very well prepared for what is these new attacks that are led against democracy.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that a Russian military intervention is possible in Georgia?
You can never say how can a country like Georgia, who has lived through so many Russian, Soviet, Russian again interventions in Georgia, say never. I won't say never, but I don't think that it's today's policy of Russia. Today's policy of Russia towards countries like Georgia and Moldova is hybrid policy. And the military one, they are well occupied with Ukraine. But you can never say. But I don't think that we have any means of preventing if Russia one day decides something. The only prevention, the only stability, the only peaceful way is to join the European Union as fast as possible. And that is what this stealing of election is trying to block. It's this path that has become very concrete and very attainable in the recent years, reachable, and that's why there is this reactivation of the Russian direct or indirect pressures.
Mm-hmm. And let me go back to the election night, because right after the voting finished, you very soon wrote on your social media that 52% of Georgians voted in favor of joining the European Union, that the country's future will be in Europe. What did you base your...
On the opinion polls before, but that doesn't really matter. On the exit poll that very evening, which are exit polls that existed in Georgia for all the last elections and were very accurate to 2% most. And that was what we had also on the pre-election opinion polls, who gave 70% of pro-European votes against 30% that were in favor of the orientation recently taken by the authorities. Mm-hmm. And what was completely unexpected, and that's part of the psychological warfare, is that the actual results that was written, not reached but written, was the exact reverse of what we had seen in the exit polls. Mm-hmm. So that was very disturbing, and that's where the frustration, not only mine, but of the population comes from.
But right about the time of your comment, the Prime Minister of Hungary congratulated Prime Minister Irakli Kobakidze on winning another election.
And
how did
He's
you react?
outside of the country. I am the president of the country, and I knew exactly where was the political will of the Georgian population. It has been the same since our independence. There has never been an opinion poll in Georgia where the support to European integration went further down from 80% was a minimum. In over 30 years, despite the wars, despite occupation of our territories, nothing changed our mind. So I won't ever believe that there could be a change of mind of the population. And one thing that everybody should know, that in Georgia there is not two Georgias. There is not one Georgia that is pro-Russian, that would like to go in that direction, and one that wants to go towards Europe. There is one Georgia that wants Europe, that has wanted that all the time, and that will finally end up in Europe, that I'm convinced. Whether we have ups and downs in between is a matter of history.
Madam President, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining me here.
Thank you.